So we are back down in the snake room today, and I'm sort of making a follow-up video to yesterday's video, which was about size actually mattering with ball pythons, specifically in relation to the age of a snake. How big the snake is in relation to how old the snake is tells you pretty well, at least in the first couple years of the snake's life, whether or not that snake has been a good eater or whether it has been fed properly. I had quite a few questions about, and I've had these over the course of the years, but even in yesterday's video, about, how do you know what age to breed a snake? And in that respect, age doesn't really matter at all, because it's really more about the weight of the snake. Usually, you're basing breeding off of the weight of a snake, not necessarily the age. Unless you've power fed the snake, which I don't think most people do at this point. If people do it, they're not really advertising that they're doing it, because it's really kind of frowned upon, I think, for most people. But, I have snakes that grow at different rates. So age isn't necessarily a thing in terms of whether or not it's okay to breed them at a certain age. This girl here is a little over a year old at this point. She has never missed a meal. She's unfortunately deep in shed. She's never missed a meal in her whole entire life. If she's in shed, she's eating. There's no circumstance where she's missed a meal. I think she was born March last year. And so she's like 1,500 grams already. I don't power feed her. I don't feed her anything big. She's mainly been eating ASFs for the last year. And she just started taking rats recently. But as you can see, she's not fat. She's not overweight. She's just a fast grower. So I'm going to ultrasound her in the next couple weeks here to see if she's actually grown follicles yet. That'll tell me whether or not, this 1-year-old snake is able to breed yet. However, she has a cousin here who, through all my best efforts, is just kind of refusing food. And at this point, she was a really fast grower to begin with, and she's probably she was a third clutch. I think she was 2 months younger than the other snake. And as you can see, there's a gigantic size difference. This girl's about 700 grams. She's probably half the size, but there's only a 2-month difference in their ages. And that's a big difference in weight. She's still a decent body shape. Hasn't lost a ton of weight or anything. She's just growing a lot slower than the other girl because she is not eating every week. She actually hasn't eaten in the past month. She's become a picky eater. I'm probably going to move her back down into a smaller tub at this point. I moved her up into a bigger tub because she wasn't eating in the smaller tub anymore. She won't eat rats. She won't eat ASF. She won't eat mice. So I'm probably going to move her back into a smaller tub to see if that kicks back the feeding response again. So, the age of the snake isn't necessarily important in relation to when they'd be able to breed, because you're going to have snakes that all have different feeding habits. They're all going to grow at different rates. It really just depends on whether, the boys are producing sperm and the females are producing follicles. And obviously you can't tell if the females are producing follicles if you don't have an ultrasound, but you can see development if you can see an ovulation if your female starts to ovulate if you have been pairing her. So that's the easiest way it tells you start pairing up a female, they start locking with a male, and at some point you start to see an ovulation. That'll tell you if the female's ready, to be honest. So the age doesn't really matter a whole lot. Sometimes it's hard to even know the age of a snake. If you're getting an older snake, sometimes those records about that snake that you purchased, if it's, from somebody says it's from 2016 or 2017, you're not going to know the definite age of that snake anyways. But something that's that old should be breeding already if it wasn't already bred. Something that you're buying that's a year old probably is not going to be ready to breed unless it's a male. I'm talking about females specifically in this video. I would assume, judging by what I've seen on Morph Market, what I've purchased over the past year and what I haven't purchased over the past year, because of what I'm going to say here, is that most snakes, females, even 2 years, most, not all, most, are not ready to breed. And even some 3-year-old snakes are not ready to breed if you're buying them from the original breeder and they're still listed on Morph Market. They kind of just get forgot about, like they get listed on Morph Market, it seems like. They get pushed to, you know, the for sale rack, and they don't get paid much attention to. Now, that's sort of kind of where I don't know how to phrase this. Basically, I kind of nearly work the same way, because I definitely pay more attention to the snakes I'm holding back. Those are the snakes that are valuable to me. They're most valuable to me. Those are the snakes that you know, are going to be producing future clutches for me. So I do pay more attention to them. However, that doesn't mean I neglect the snakes that I have for sale. That doesn't mean I'm not feeding the snakes I have for sale. I'm just giving higher priority and paying attention to what's going on with the things I'm holding back. So, you know, if my goal really is when I hatch snakes and when they're ready to go, my goal is to sell them right away. I don't have any snakes from early clutches last year left in my for sale rack. This snake, let's see, this is from like my last clutch, this snake right here of the year last year. This little pied male here. I don't know why he hasn't sold. I have him marked down like $500. So if you are interested, you know, take a look at him. But he's the only thing left I have from 2023 that isn't sold yet. And I only have 1, 2, 3, 4 snakes from my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have that one too. I have 5 snakes from, actually, no, I'm sorry, this one's from 23 as well. Also, he's actually huge. He's like 350 grams. And then these are all the Black Xanthic Project snakes as well. They haven't sold yet, but those are from this year. So, you know, I have, 6 snakes that I have left over from late last year, early this year that haven't sold yet. I've sold everything else. So my priority is to move these snakes out that I'm not keeping so that I can focus. And that's why I like my hashtag that I've been using is feeding and breeding season. This, to me, it's feeding and breeding season. I want to focus on my snakes. I want to focus on growing up the females. I want to focus on pairing up my males and my females and getting eggs and hatching them. I don't want to focus on selling stuff anymore. I don't want to focus on taking care of them anymore. That doesn't mean I don't take care of them. Obviously, I have a 300-gram 4-month-old male sitting in there that's ready to go. He's obviously getting fed well. But I don't want to focus on that. So my kind of process is to sell snakes as fast as I can because I don't want them here. I don't want to take care of them long term. So now I don't know why other breeders don't take the same process, because if you're having a snake sit in your rack for 2 or 3 years, you're losing money on it because the value of that snake actually does go down quite a bit. If it's a female and there's quite a few genes in it and it's recessive, there's potential that it holds its value. But if something occurs like what occurred over the last 3 years, where, you know, 3 years ago a Dream Skull was selling for $4,000 as a baby, well, you're not getting $4,000 for that baby anymore. You would have been better off selling it 3 years ago and trying a little harder to sell it than holding on to it for 3 years, feeding it, having it take up rack space, and then selling it now for $1,000. Maybe if it's an adult, you're going to get a little more than that, maybe $2,000, maybe $3,000, but you still lost money at the end of the day. So, you know, it's a game. You know, everybody has limited space, so you can't hold on to everything anyways. But you know, back to what the video was originally about. After that tangent, age isn't necessarily a giant factor in a lot of this. The point of yesterday's video was that weight in relation to age is a giant factor, and you should know that because that tells you whether or not that snake is eating well, growing well, or being fed well, taken care of even. But age in relation to whether or not that snake is ready to breed is not necessarily a factor, because as I showed with these two girls back here, they can grow at alarmingly different rates. And now these are both holdbacks. I'm giving them top priorities, but I can't make a snake eat. And, one eats everything and one eats half the time. So, the one snake is going to be ready to breed almost now, and the other one might not be ready to breed for another year and a half, 2 years, depending on it, how she eats. So, don't focus on age a whole lot if you're just worried about breeding it. If you already have the snake and you know what age it is, don't worry about, I'm waiting for this thing to be 2, I'm waiting for this thing to be 3, I'm waiting for it to be 4 before I breed it, because that's not really a good factor in determining whether or not you should be breeding it. But you should know that, if it's a healthy snake, if it's eating well, probably around 2 to 3 years old is when you should be aiming at breeding that female, assuming that you're feeding it the right size meals, assuming that you're keeping it healthy, assuming that your husbandry is on point. That female should be ready around 2 to 3 years old. So hopefully that clears up some kind of confusion about that, especially for the newer breeders. You can't focus too much on the small little details, and you don't want to focus on the details that are kind of irrelevant too. So, a lot of these videos are going to be driven by comments or questions you guys have in them. My goal here is to try to make 5 videos a week, one every day of the week, Monday through Friday. So sometimes it'll just be showing cool snakes in the rack. Sometimes it will be answering questions that you guys have in the comments, or responding to comments that people have in the videos. So hopefully that helps in terms of answering the question about the ages of the snakes. And we will see you next week.